Zoe, yeah, this is the only mystery that the FBI has been unable to solve for more than 50 years. This case is one of the most intriguing cases I have been involved in throughout my work in the FBI.
Cooper.
DB Cooper.
DB Cooper.
DB Cooper.
DB Cooper.
DB Cooper.
DB Cooper. Finally, we were able to solve it indeed. Most of you may have heard about the story of Dan Cooper, the man who challenged the Federal Bureau of Investigation and exhausted them for many years with his pursuit without them being able to catch him or unravel the mystery of his story. And today, after more than 50 years, I bring you the good news in this video as the case has finally been solved. Today, we will share with you the full story of Dan Cooper, for the first time with its exciting details. Whether you have heard about the story before or remember some of its events, we invite you to watch the video until the end to discover Cooper's true identity and the new evidence that turned the tables and solved the mystery of his case. On the evening of the 24th of November, 1971, this day, which coincides with the day before Thanksgiving in the United States, millions of Americans were preparing to celebrate their holiday, just as we prepare on the last day of Ramadan to welcome Eid. The atmosphere of joy and anticipation prevailed among most people, but on this day, a mysterious man entered Portland Airport. This man was very elegant, wearing a formal black suit and was about 180 centimeters tall. He was wearing a tie with a long coat over it, sunglasses, and carrying a small business briefcase. No one expected that this man was about to leave the strongest mark in the history of airplane hijackings. He had devised a meticulous plan and was very confident that he could carry out one of the largest air hijackings in history. Everyone who saw this man thought he was just an ordinary businessman, nothing distinguishing him from the other travelers. He seemed like just another passenger intending to head to Seattle. The man approached the ticket counter, bought a plane ticket, and registered it under the alias Dan Cooper. The ticket was for a one-way domestic flight from Portland to Seattle and cost about $20, and he decided to pay in cash. Cooper chose to travel on Northwest Orient Airlines, flight number 305. At that time, there were no strict security measures like today. If your flight was domestic, all you had to do was buy the ticket and board the plane without needing to check your identity or inspect your luggage. Even if someone carried a gun or prohibited materials, there was nothing to detect it. The flight was short, lasting no more than half an hour, just a simple trip. After Dan Cooper bought his ticket, he sat quietly in the waiting lounge, sipping his coffee while his eyes watched the movement of travelers around him, patiently waiting for his flight's departure time. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it was time for the flight and the passengers began boarding the plane, including Dan Cooper. There were 36 passengers on board in addition to a crew of 6 members, including the pilot, his assistant, and the flight attendants. Dan Cooper chose to sit in the last seat by the wall to be able to clearly observe everything in front of him. After the plane took off, the flight attendant began to move among the passengers to take their orders, and when she reached Cooper, he ordered a soda mixed with alcohol. After Dan Cooper finished his cigarette and drink, he took out a small piece of paper he had prepared in advance and put it in his pocket. And when the flight attendant passed by him again, he handed her the paper quietly without saying a word. At first, the flight attendant thought Cooper was acting recklessly or trying to attract attention. She thought to herself, even on the plane, this man doesn't stop his strange behavior. She took the paper without opening it immediately. thinking it contained words of affection or a request to contact her. But Cooper looked at her sharply, knowing she ignored the message, and realized she had put it in her pocket without reading it. And when she passed by him again, he called her and told her calmly with a sharp and serious tone, "You'd better open the paper and see what's written in it." With his serious look and clear insistence, the hostess realized that there was something unusual. She quickly opened the paper and read, "Miss, I have a bomb, and I want you to sit next to me." She felt terror sweep over her, and her heart raced wildly as anxiety and fear took over her features. When the hostess sat next to Cooper, he opened his bag and showed her a bomb connected with wires. Cooper looked at her and hinted that he could detonate it at any moment and was determined to do so, making her feel the intense danger. And she felt her heart beating faster than before. But she tried to stay calm and composed. Cooper said to her calmly, "Now write down my demands and inform the pilot." The hostess replied in a weak voice, "Okay, what are your demands?" Cooper's demands consisted of 3 things, and he answered her, "My first demand is that the plane be refueled immediately upon landing at the airport. And my second demand is $200,000 in cash. As for my third demand, it is 4 parachutes, 2 of the rear type and 2 of the front type." The flight attendant said to him, "Okay, I will fulfill your request." The flight attendant got up from her seat and headed towards the front of the plane to the cockpit. She entered and told the pilot about the conversation between them and said to him, "This man is serious and not joking. I sat next to him and saw the bomb with my own eyes, and he warned me that if we underestimate him, the consequences will not be good at all." The situation started to become very tense, but so far, the rest of the passengers were not aware of what was happening. The pilot immediately communicated directly with the control tower at Seattle Airport and informed them of what had happened. The control tower's response was quick, saying to him, "Listen to anything Cooper says and respond with, 'Yes, sir, understood and obeyed.' And none of you should anger or provoke him at all, because if something happens on the plane and it explodes, our reputation will be destroyed forever." The authorities acted quickly and requested the assistance of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, to manage this crisis. The plane was still in the air, and Cooper was sitting in his seat, drinking his beverage and smoking with complete calm, as if he had no worries or concerns. At the same time, the authorities were quickly working to prepare the amount requested by Cooper, which was $200,000, in addition to 4 parachutes as he asked. For his part, the pilot decided to inform the passengers that there was a slight delay in the flight due to a minor technical issue, to reassure them and confirm that everything will be fine, so as not to raise any suspicion or fear among the passengers. The flight attendants were going back and forth to Cooper, who was speaking to them calmly and confidently, assuring them that he did not wish to harm anyone as long as his demands were met. His calm demeanor and refined manners added to his mystery, and it put everyone in a state of tension and anxiety. After several hours of negotiations, the control tower contacted the pilot and informed him that everything was ready and he could land now. The plane landed at Seattle Airport, where the police and investigators were waiting. Dan Cooper approached the pilot and told him when we land to move slightly away from the designated path, turn off the plane's lights, and ask the vehicle that will refuel us to come to us, and we will not go to it. These precautions and risks were carefully calculated by Cooper, as he was keen not to be caught in any way. To ensure his plan was foolproof, he requested 4 parachutes even though he didn't need them all, to create a sense of fear in the FBI. So, they would think that a crew member might use the parachute to escape with them, and therefore they couldn't modify or tamper with it. Cooper ensured that all the parachutes were in good and sound condition. As for the money, serial numbers were placed on the bills so they could track them if Cooper tried to use them later. One of the flight attendants took the money and parachutes and handed them to Cooper. After he confirmed they were as requested, he said to her, "Now you can let the passengers off, and you can get off with them too." Indeed, all the passengers disembarked from the plane without having any idea of what was happening. For them, the flight was proceeding very normally, as if they were on their usual journey, while the real events were unfolding in secret. Cooper kept the pilot, his assistant, the flight engineer, and one of the hostesses to ensure no surprises occurred. This made the number of people on the plane 5, including Cooper. After the plane was refueled, Cooper received the money and parachutes and gave the signal for the plane to take off again. This time, the destination of the plane was chosen by Cooper. When the flight attendant asked him about his destination, he initially told her that his destination was Mexico, but the pilot informed him that the plane couldn't reach there due to the long distance and that the fuel wouldn't be sufficient. After the discussion, Cooper decided to change the direction to the city of Reno in the state of Nevada. Cooper's conditions for the pilot were strict and specific. He asked him to fly at a very low altitude, about 10,000 feet only, with a speed of 200 miles per hour. He also requested that the plane's wheels remain extended throughout the flight and that the lights stay off. Cooper issued these orders calmly and confidently, making the situation more mysterious and threatening at the same time. Someone listening to these conditions might think that Cooper is a professional in the field of aviation because these conditions indicate his deep knowledge about how airplanes work, especially the Boeing 727 model he was on, because it is the only model of its kind that has a rear door that can be opened during flight. And this part was essential in his escape plan. These requests made the investigators suspect that he might have had a strong background in aviation, either as a former pilot, or perhaps he had military experience. Cooper did not care much about the destination the plane would travel to because he had planned in advance not to reach there. Changing the destination was part of his strategy to divert attention from the location he intended to jump from. After about 50 minutes since takeoff from Seattle Airport, Cooper began executing the final part of his plan. He communicated with the flight attendant and told her, "I want you now to go to the front of the plane with the pilots, close the door behind you, and do not try to talk to me or watch me." The flight attendant replied, "Yes, sir, as you wish." Then she went to the front. Meanwhile, Cooper went to the back of the plane and started taking off his tie. Then he began preparing the parachutes. He put on the main parachute first, and then he put on the second reserve parachute, one on the back and the other on the front. What caught attention here is that Cooper left behind 2 parachutes. One of them was for training and not suitable for the current altitudes, which showed that he had good flying experience. Then Cooper headed towards the rear stairs of the plane and began to open it. The pilots noticed a slight change in the plane's balance and pressure, as if bidding farewell to its last passenger. The decisive moment had arrived. Cooper was completely ready, his bag full of money and his parachute securely strapped to his back. The plane was flying over an area covered with dense forests and surrounded by towering mountains near the city of Reno. In a decisive moment, Cooper advanced toward the open stairs and without hesitation jumped into the depths of darkness. The weather was very cold, the winds were strong, and the sky was completely dark, making it impossible to see anything. In these difficult and impossible conditions, Dan Cooper decided to jump. The area was extremely rugged, known for its dense forests and challenging terrain. And this step revealed his great boldness and meticulous planning as he chose a time and place. He knew it would be extremely difficult for the authorities to pursue him there. And from this moment, the mystery of Cooper began, which amazed the world and exhausted the FBI for 40 years. When the pilot heard the alert sound, he felt that something was not normal and checked the situation. After that, he confirmed that Cooper had jumped from the plane. The pilot's biggest concern was that Cooper would escape, leaving the explosives on the plane. But Cooper showed great cunning. He took his bag with him and left no evidence behind except for his tie. Even the note he gave to the stewardess. At the beginning of the story, he took it back from her as soon as she read it. When the plane arrived at Reno Airport, the Federal Bureau of Investigation forces were on high alert. They stormed the plane and conducted a thorough search from top to bottom. They gathered statements, descriptions, and all important information to begin a series of meetings that led to the launch of one of the largest search operations in the history of the FBI. Rescue teams spread out in all areas where Cooper might have fallen, with their primary focus on finding any evidence. Fighter jets and helicopters flew over the surrounding areas, while the forests were meticulously combed by ground teams working on foot with the help of trained police dogs searching for any scent or trace. The forests were dense, and the rivers hindered movement, while the weather was cold and difficult. Despite the efforts made, no trace of Cooper was found, as if he vanished into thin air. At this moment, something unprecedented happened in the history of the FBI, as this was the first time they failed to capture Cooper after struggling to find him. They decided to ask for help from the public in the search, which was the biggest mistake they made, and you will know the reason later. After that, they announced a huge financial reward of $50,000 for anyone who could provide information leading to the arrest of Dan Cooper or solving the case. The amount was enough to change anyone's life at that time, and calls and claims began to flood in abundantly. Many situations occurred, but I will mention the three most notable ones. In one of these situations, a person called and said he had found Cooper's parachute in the forest that the search teams were combing. And when they arrived to verify, they discovered it was indeed a parachute, but after analyzing it, they found nothing indicating Cooper. And when they confronted him, he confessed, saying, "I deliberately put it there to win the cash reward." In the second situation, another person discovered money with the same serial numbers as those on the stolen money and claimed they were historical pieces. Unmatched. He said that this money belongs to Cooper. When the FBI confronted him, it turned out that the money was counterfeit. And the man was trying to deceive and scam people. In the last situation, a stern and serious person came to them and said to the FBI, "You are exhausting yourselves searching for any evidence or information about Cooper, and I have brought you something greater than all of this. You now have Dan Cooper himself, and I am ready to appear with you in an interview on the condition that you advance me the reward amount." In the end, it turned out he was a fraud as well. But with all these contacts and cooperation from people, they did not achieve any result. Most of them were just scammers seeking money, while others were only looking for fame. Regarding the developments of the case, in 1980, they discovered a portion of the money that Cooper had requested, finding about $5,800 of the same money. These funds were found in the Columbia River area in Washington state. A discovery that raised doubts among those who believed he had died or was still alive. As for the tie that Cooper left on the plane, it was analyzed, and they discovered that it contained certain elements like titanium, which is a material used in aircraft manufacturing. This increased the likelihood that Cooper worked in the aviation field. The FBI investigated more than 800 suspects over the years, but to make a long story short, there are 4 people suspected of being Cooper. However, a new piece of evidence recently emerged confirming who among them is likely to be Cooper. The first suspect was Dwayne Weber. Dwayne was a military man and a former criminal with a long history of forgery and theft. He was suspected for 3 main reasons. First, he has strong experience in parachuting thanks to his military background. The second reason is that they found strange notes in his diaries related to hijacking planes and theft. And the last reason is his wife's confession before his death, saying that he had told her he was Dan Cooper. However, after his death, nothing like the money or any other evidence was found, which led some to believe that he was hallucinating or saying baseless things due to his mental illness, so they excluded him. As for the second suspect, he is called Kenneth. He worked as a flight attendant for the same airline called Northwest, where the hijacking occurred. After the incident, he bought a large piece of land for a huge amount, which made the FBI suspicious of him. But after the investigation and showing his pictures to the witnesses who met Cooper, they confirmed that his appearance was completely different, and Kenneth lacked parachuting experience, which led to his exclusion. The third suspect is Robert, who raised suspicions due to his military background and his skills in parachuting and handling explosives. He boasted about his ability to do what Cooper did, and more. Despite his statements, no material evidence incriminated him. After investigating him, it turned out that there was nothing against him except his empty talk. The last suspect, who surprised everyone, was Dan Cooper himself, whose real name was Richard Floyd McCoy. 5 months after the first hijacking incident on the 25th of May, 1972, he carried out a new hijacking operation in the same manner on a Boeing 727 belonging to U.S. Air in the state of Utah. McCoy's method was very similar to Cooper's hijacking. He boarded the plane quietly and respectfully, and after takeoff he handed the steward a paper on which he had written, "Miss, I have a bomb, and I want you to sit next to me." This time, he was greedier, as he asked for $500,000 and 4 parachutes, 2 front and 2 back. He let the passengers off, and gave the same instructions to the pilot. Then he jumped from the rear door of the plane. But his plan failed this time, as the FBI tracked the ransom in the state of Utah and found a bill with the same serial numbers, which led to his quick arrest. But the question that comes to everyone's mind is, since Richard executed the exact same operation, so why didn't they know that Dan Cooper was Richard at that time? The answer is that Richard did not confess when confronted with the charge of hijacking the first plane, and there was no conclusive evidence against him, either from the stolen money or through DNA analysis. What complicated matters further was when they showed him to the crew members who had seen Cooper on the first flight. They said that the person they arrested was not the same Cooper they saw the first time, and then he was sentenced to 45 years in prison. But after 2 years, he escaped from prison and died after a shootout with the police. Rumors and theories about the Cooper case continued for many years. Finally, a retired pilot named Dan Ryder. He opened a YouTube channel and dedicated it to discussing the case after the FBI closed the file, unable to solve it for more than 50 years. In the year 2016, Ryder began dedicating more time to studying the Cooper case through his channel, where he worked on raising awareness about the case. He investigated it in his own way, presenting and analyzing the various evidence and theories in a detailed and interesting manner. And through his research, Ryder reached the home of Richard Floyd McCoy and began trying to communicate with his children. But despite his many attempts, McCoy's children refused to provide any information or acknowledge anything related to the case. They completely refused discussing the matter with him or delving into any details about the subject. After years of silence and finally after their mother's death, the children of Richard Floyd McCoy decided to confess the truth. They revealed that their father was indeed Dan Cooper and explained that their mother was involved in helping him carry out the operation. They confirmed that they had previously refrained from speaking out of fear of being investigated or exposing their mother to imprisonment. As Dan Ryder said, "I did the impossible to make them talk, and they didn't until their mother passed away." After this confession, Ryder was able to enter their house, where he delved into the basement that contained old documents and evidence related to the case. Among these pieces of evidence, he found Cooper's parachute. Ryder said the specifications of the parachutes used that night were very precise. For 20 years of searching, I was looking for that specially modified green military parachute, and when I stumbled upon it by chance, I pulled it out and took just one look. I immediately recognized the modifications. I knew exactly what I was looking for. There was no doubt that it was the required parachute. After Ryder's video spread on YouTube, the FBI contacted him and reopened the investigation into the case. They asked him for the umbrella he found to conduct DNA analysis on it for final confirmation. After thorough investigation and conducting the necessary analyses, the results showed that the parachute found by Ryder is the same one that was delivered to Cooper. The DNA analyses matched the data, in addition to some secret codes that the FBI secretly placed in the parachute to identify it during the search operation. Initially, some people doubted Ryder's credibility and considered his research just a show or an attempt to attract attention and gain views. However, after the Federal Bureau of Investigation contacted him, precise scientific investigations proved the validity of what he presented through in-depth analyses. With these analyses, the case was removed from the circle of continuous mystery. Finally, the mystery of Dan Cooper, which the FBI failed to solve for more than 50 years, was resolved. The case became one of the biggest mysteries in the history of airplane hijackings, and the truth that had been questioned for decades was revealed. And you, dear viewer, share your opinion with us in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to our channel to receive all the latest updates.